Close-Up is brought to you by the Kia Sorento R, redefining the power of Kia.
If you were a child being abused in your own home, would you plead for help? Would you try to block it out? Would you run away? Monique Hoffman tried all those things. Monique was sexually abused by her dad, Colin John Hoffman. At 13, she took the brave step of calling for help from Child, Youth and Family. But the officials left Monique in her dad's house. Tonight we'll hear what SIF has to say, but first this from reporter Jahan Casanada and producer Shalene Hearn.
I was just a child who trusted her father. I had no idea that what was happening wasn't meant to be happening. He was like the Incredible Hulk, I suppose, but just like the Hulk, there were faults there. He's taken so much from me. Things that nobody should ever take.
Monique was desperate for help, but when she called for it, it never came.
I can recall right back to when I was 9. 1 minute, we're lying in the bed beside our father, getting ready to go to sleep, and the next thing I know, his hands are all over my body.
Monique was sexually abused for years until she told one of her schoolmates. Child, Youth and Family was called in.
They asked me what was going on, so I told them. My father's been touching me, he's been kissing me, he keeps me up later than everybody else at night time, he puts his hand under my shirts, down my pants, he comes into my room at night times.
You told them all of that?
Yep.
But SIF didn't take Monique away. Instead, they sent her home that night, and they told Colin what Monique had said.
They didn't put any plan in place to make sure I was never alone with him. So therefore he got his mitts into me, took me downstairs and said, look, you either tell them what's been going on and I'll more than likely go to jail for a very long time and you'll get taken away from the rest of the family and you'll go into foster care, or you tell them you were mad at me for not letting you go to your friends.
So he asked you to lie to SIFs?
Correct.
And you did?
Correct. I was a scared little child. I was scared of being thrown away.
The very next day, Monique told SIF it was all just a misunderstanding. The social worker thought 13-year-old Monique had just been trying to get her dad into trouble.
She's punishing her father with either threats to expose his behaviour or telling false stories about him. Monique acts as a woman scorned.
But we have a copy of Child, Youth and Families files. They reveal just how much the agency knew about Monique.
I have decided to proceed with entering information on Monique's file.
Both the children and the father are in therapy.
Punched with fists in the back and stomach.
Being left unsupervised and alone.
In the previous 5 years, SIF had been alerted that Colin and at least 2 of his partners had physically abused Monique.
They didn't look at any of that. They didn't say, okay, well, hang on, maybe we do need to look at this more because this child has had more abuse than this accusation.
Monique was offered therapy, but SIF's final decision about her allegations came in capital letters, in black and white.
They never came back after that. There were no follow-ups, there were no checks. I was getting really scared. It wasn't long after that I took her from home.
Monique spent years moving around the country and working odd jobs. She even had 2 kids of her own, but she couldn't escape her past.
I wanted to get how I was feeling out of me. It was killing me. I was getting ready to pick up the phone and call a friend to come and pick up my kids so I could go for a drive. And instead I picked up the phone and rang the police and said, I need to speak to somebody about something that my father had been doing to me as a child.
In court, Monique proved what she had told SIF 10 years earlier, that Colin Hoffman was an abuser.
Taking it to trial, I would have never thought that it would have been as hard as what it was. To stand up in front of people I didn't know, I'd never seen before, I'd never met before, and tell them my story.
He was jailed for 10 years for rape and unlawful sexual connection.
I don't hate you for what you've done. I never will, because I'm not giving you that power anymore. And you've taught me to be a really strong person.
As a victim, Monique had name suppression, but she lifted it to allow us to tell this story. We've waited a year and a half to do it. That's because Colin Hoffman appealed his convictions. That appeal was thrown out last week and he'll stay in jail for the next 7 years. Now Monique wants answers from Child, Youth and Family.
A huge explanation.
It's not about money?
No. A huge explanation.
While Monique says she didn't really have a childhood, she now has her own kids to look after.
The fear of losing either of my children for any unforeseen reason is like a paper cut to the side of my heart. It is something I would never be able to handle. So therefore it is my sole purpose in life to never ever let that happen.
And Monique has a message for any abuse victims who have doubts about whether they can get help.
People look at me and say, well, you know, I'm not as strong as you and I'm not as tough as you emotionally. You don't need to be. You want to cry, cry. The police have got more than enough tissues. You know, our tax money pays for that. Yeah, just put your hand up and don't ever feel ashamed, because it is not your shame. It's not something you did, it's just something you have to live with.
An incredibly brave woman. Now, Child, Youth and Family wouldn't come on the program tonight, but in a statement they told us Monique's case is being investigated in detail by an independent claims unit. They promise a thorough review, but say it could take 18 months. SIF say if the review finds any failings, the agency will take responsibility.